Legacy is something that we, as a generation, leave behind for our successors. That is why it is imperative to possess good knowledge of international ongoings, for only as true citizens of the world can we lead it to glory. And only when we realize the responsibility left on us by our ancestors can we hope to carve a better tomorrow. With this, I would now like keeping this in mind, Kirmit section is proud to present Model United Nations on the topic, Contemplation on the Repercussions of Events in History and the Changes by Them.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the members of the Executive Board, I welcome you all to this session of United Nations General Assembly, Social, Cultural and Humanitarian Committee. I, Divyam Chaudhary, will be serving as the chairperson for this session of UNGI SOCHUM, which will be stimulating at City Montessori School. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to the members of the Executive Board. To my left is Ms. Sanjana Singh, serving as the Vice Chairperson, and right in front of me is the Rapporteur, Mr. Shauryan Sonu. By the discretion of the Executive Board, the agenda has been set to contemplation of the repercussions of important historical events and the lessons learned from them.
Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. In this room today, it's not just about today, it's about yesterday and it's about tomorrow. History of a place affects the way we speak, think and interact with each other. Our history helps us to know where we came from, to know what direction to go in. Our past prepares us for a better future. Not only does it help us to make better decisions, but it also helps us to avoid the same mistakes again. Yes, history has a way of repeating itself. Our legacy prepares us for a better future. I wish you fruitful discussions. I trust that all of you will think of the past, the future, the ancestors, and the unborn children that are the glue that binds us here together today.
The House will now come to order. We will begin the session by conducting the roll call, which will be taken by the Vice Chairperson. Delegates are reminded to raise their placards up high when their names are taken and respond with either a present or present and voting.
We are now taking the roll call. All the delegates with their roll call as present kindly raise their placards. All the delegates with their roll call as present and voting kindly raise their placards. With the current number of delegates, the quorum of the committee has been set up to 11. That is, we need 11 number of delegates to pass a motion.
Now, we are looking for the motion to establish the General Speakers list.
Delegate from Japan, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. Delegate from Japan wishes to establish the General Speakers list.
All delegates wishing to speak in the GSL kindly raise their placards. Delegate from United Kingdom, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition, Chair. History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it. These were the words of late Sir Alfred Winston Churchill. Certainly, World War II was indeed the biggest fault of us humans. It did for sure affect the whole world in a really catastrophic way. But it did more to Great Britain. Our great nation has sacrificed millions of men in the name of a war to end all wars. Our citizens were forced to live a life of a pathetic thief in hiding just because of the German Air Force. Our economy crippled, our infrastructure made down to ruins, and above all, our reputation, our great empire burned down to ashes. When the war to terrify all wars came to a much-awaited end, we were victorious. But victory came to us with a huge price tag on it. Economically, the war ruined Britain. Although there were some positive social and political changes too. What the nation also took as a positive was that people became more became more aware of what was happening around them. From being a self-centered society, the Brits became more open-minded. There was more social mobility. Also, women's role in the society became more prominent, as during the war men were away. Since then, our great nation has continued to walk on a path to glory. In the end, the delegate of England would just like to send one message. England is one of the greatest because we have made mistakes. We have, but most importantly, we have learned from them and we are better than ever. Thank you.
Before we proceed, I would like to speak a few words about the United Nations. When the whole world was blazing in the flames of envy, aggression, wars, and gunfires, two revolutionists, President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Sir Winston Churchill, came up with the proposal of UN, an organization which was supposed to even all odds, and therefore the United Nations, born from the ashes of the League of Nations, was established on 24th October 1945, and since then it has been working to bring the countries of the world together. Proceeding with the session, I would like to ask, at this point of time, do we have any points on the floor? Any motions on the floor? Delegate from United States of America, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. The delegate of the USA wishes to raise a motion to enter the moderated caucus.
Delegates wishing to speak in the moderated caucus, kindly raise their placards. Delegate from Germany, you are recognized.
Guten Abend. For 28 years, German comrades and families were set apart. Our own country was divided into two parts by the Berlin Wall. 302 towers filled with soldiers ready to kill anyone who dared to trespass. Thousands of people killed just because they wanted to meet their families on the other side. Finally, in 1989, the wall came down. Germany was once again free and united. The wall that symbolized communism was destroyed. This year marks the 29th year of German independence. Our ancestors left parts of the wall so that the coming generations would remember the sacrifice of those who lost their lives. Finally, I would like to say that this was not just freedom for Germany. This was a big step against communism for the whole world and the freedom for us all to unite. Danke.
Delegate from Japan, you are recognized.
Thank you, madam. Every positive value has its price in negative terms. The genius of Einstein led to Hiroshima. 73 years ago, 2 nuclear atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These bombs devastated the cities and finally brought us to surrender, bringing to an end a fierce and costly Pacific War. More than 140,000 people died, and the cities became known for cancer, premature births, and malformed babies. Today, Hiroshima and Nagasaki have become synonymous with a mushroom cloud and a trail of destruction in its wake. However, after this attack, the world became aware of the terrible consequences a nuclear weapon could have, and that was very significant. 60 years of Cold War passed without the use of nuclear weapon. I'd wish to end my speech with a quote. I lived as best I could, and then I died. Be careful where you step. The grave is wide. Thank you.
The delegate from Russia, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. There is probably no bigger and longer tragedy than Cold War At least in Russia it is. Imagine a war fought with no weapons, but extreme hatred. A brutal race for superiority. That's how America versus Russia look like. Both countries have exhausted shocking amount of supplies to make themselves bigger. During the war, both the US citizens and the Russian citizens were true haters of each other. It was this unfortunate time that the hatred caused both the nations to pick a side in the civil war in the Middle East, which ultimately led to the formation of terrorist organization funded mostly by KGB or CIA. After 43 years of wait, the Cold War was put to an end. But what was done was done. Things haven't changed much. Although Russia is determined to end all the hatred and terror that is spread all over the globe to once again restore peace in all the sectors. Thank you.
Delegate from India, you are recognized.
Namaste. Home to some of the world's most ancient surviving civilizations, the Indian subcontinent, from the mountainous Afghan frontier to the jungles of Burma, is both vast and diverse in terms of its people, language, and cultural traditions. Over the course of history, India has faced several invasions. While most of the invaders made their intentions clear, right from the word go, the British managed to bring India under their control through a business venture. Their divide and rule policy led to our downfall. Leaving the past behind, we have moved on. Learning from our mistakes, we have developed a policy of non-alignment and have transformed into a secular country. The policy of non-alignment states that India will not align with or against any major power, and the idea of secularism was always in the spirit of India, even before introducing the word secular in the preamble. There have been many empires of sorts in this world, but India is the only country which created an empire of spirits. Dhanyavad.
Delegate from United States of America, you are recognized.
Thank you. 17 years ago, the United States wasn't officially engaged in any wars. Few of us had ever heard of Al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden. And the ISIS didn't even exist. Our surveillance state was a fraction of its current size. And perhaps hardest to believe, we didn't have to take off our shoes to go through airport security. America's involvement on the war on terror was prompted by the 9/11 terrorist attacks. This resulted in a dramatic change in our nation's attitude and concerns about safety, vigilance, and privacy. It ushered in a new generation of policies, often at the expense of civil liberties. Long airport lines, full body scans, and the thorough pat-downs. These are now a common practice in all airports of the USA. Today, till date, we look at every foreigner as a person who could pose threat to a nation. And in defense, we are forced to raise walls. Yes, 9/11 has changed us Americans. Thank you.
Permission to ask a question from Delegate of USA.
Permission granted.
Delegate of USA, you have spoken about the repercussions of 9/11 attack. Has there been any positive side too?
The answer to this is complicated, but in the long run, we Americans have become stronger, more resilient, and aware. I shall send a detailed answer through a note. Thank you.
Delegate from South Africa, you are recognized.
Thank you, madam. No one is born hating another person because of the color of the skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can hate, then they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Unquote. Apartheid or institutionalized racial segregation is the discrimination of people as whites, blacks, colored, and Indian by judging on the basis of the color of the skin. Consequently, the ICC forbade South Africa to play, but later accepted white players only until freed from the shackles of apartheid. On 17 June 1991, the ANC and an apartheid-free Africa were formed. The government took control and millions regained their rights.
Today, South Africa is known as the Rainbow Nation. Quoting Nelson Mandela again, never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land again experiences oppression of one over another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa.
Delegate from Afghanistan, you are recognized.
Assalamu alaikum. Serenity is not freedom from the storm, but peace amid the storm. Afghanistan was very different from what it is today. It was a peaceful and lively place to live. Guns and bombs were not a regular feature as in Taliban rule. Men and women were not segregated. The Afghan society was moving towards being a progressive society. Then came Taliban. While power in Afghanistan, Taliban women are forced to wear burqa at all times in public because, according to them, the face of women is the source of corruption for men. People live with fear. Whenever the government fights the Taliban, people are caught in the crossfire, bringing life to a standstill. It may be quiet at that moment, but Taliban still remains there. So, my dear friends, I request you all to understand that Afghanistan won't be peaceful again until all the world powers unite to eliminate terrorism and bigotry. Thank you.
Amongst us is the Nobel Prize winner, Malala Yousafzai. I would like to invite her to add on the speech from the delegate of Afghanistan.
Thank you, madam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. With guns, you can kill terrorists. With education, you can kill terrorism. This is what I believe. Dear friends, on 9th of October 2012, the Taliban shot me on the left side of my forehead. They shot my friends too. They thought that the bullets would silence us, but they failed. These men try to destroy our democracies, our freedom of religion, our right to go to school, but we refuse to be divided. Dear brothers and sisters, we want education for every child's bright future. At Malala Fund, we are spending on educators and advocates in developing countries. Progress may be slow, but I believe I can see every girl in school in my lifetime. So let us wage a global struggle against illiteracy, poverty, terrorism, and pick up our books and pens because education is the only solution. Education first. Thank you.
Delegate from Vietnam, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. The guns and the bombs, the rockets and the warships are all symbols of human failure. Vietnam, a hub of Southeast Asia, rich in exotic culture, and a country that has been colonized by China for more than 1,000 years and 68 years by the French. Vietnam is all about its rivalry with America. With the war lasting for 20 years, the Vietnam War took away more than 2 million lives, in which many of them were innocent civilians. However, the impacts of the war were catastrophic due to the fact that Americans dropped nearly 7 million tons of explosives in newborn babies who were born with deficiencies such as rickets. The North Vietnamese Army, the NVA, massacred thousands of South Vietnamese after the Americans had left. Many people, also known as Boer people, tried to flee South Vietnam. Vietnam was ruined. Its infrastructure was destroyed, and its farmland was polluted by American chemical warfare. Despite the war, Vietnamese people are very friendly towards all kinds of nationalities. Thank you.
Delegate from Indonesia, you are recognized.
Thank you, madam. On 26 December 2004, our prosperous nation was hit by the most terrible tsunami ever recorded. At that moment, we were weak with fragile economic fronts, so we suffered a great deal of damage. We also suffered many casualties in the infrastructure collapse, but that was not the end. That didn't stop us. With the cooperation of our neighbors and support from our citizens, we were able to resurrect our land. All of a sudden, there was a change in the mindset of our people to build a newer and a beautiful Indonesia. Lastly, I would like to thank the United Nations for providing us with the aid when it was most needed. Thus, we rose like a phoenix from the ashes. Thank you.
Delegate from Italy, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. Your Excellency, the chairperson's honorable delegates, I offer neither pay nor food. I offer only hunger, thirst, forced marches, battles, and death. Let him who loves his country, and not merely with his lips, follow me. Unquote. The Italian unification, or the Risorgimento, was a political and social movement that consolidated different states of the Italian peninsula into the single state of the Kingdom of Italy in the 19th century. We were privileged to have Giuseppe Mazzini and Garibaldi, who remain the two famous protagonists of the consistent war to achieve democracy. Italy had had numerous adversaries during this period of unification, but we also must not forget the sacrifices made and the pain the civilians suffered for years living in divided nations, which led to only a small number of the population speaking the standardized language, and the North and South economically and culturally different when the new nation formed. We stand here today because Italy was resilient. The visage of our great leaders remains immortal, despite the allegations and depravity of our enemies. Thank you.
Permission to ask a question from the delegate of Italy.
Permission granted.
I want to know, you talked about Italian unification. Italy was divided into a number of states before Italian unification. Why did Italy disrupt the alliance during World War I to capture land when unification had already taken place? Thank you.
Like all the other nations, dear delegate of Japan, Italy also coveted territorial gains. And if we consider the necessity of this matter, then some of the territories did not join the Kingdom of Italy in 19th century. For this reason, sometimes the period of unification is extended to include the First World War, which is considered the completion of unification. Henceforth, it was a decision worthy of appraisal and against servitude. Thank you.
With this, we come to the end of this moderated caucus. At this point of time, do we have any points on the floor? Any motion on the floor? Seeing none, we revert to the GSL. So the next speaker on the list is the delegate from France.
Thank you, madam. Bonjour. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Yes, it was the French Revolution. One of the greatest events in the history of Europe, which drawn everyone into the wild hurly-burly of fierce warfare and uproar, which followed upon the rising of a people against the rulers. For sure, it not only brought changes to our own country, but gave the whole world a better perspective of human rights. But before the revolution, our society was divided into a three-class system. The first class consisted of the clergies, the second class were of the nobles, and the third, or the lower class, were the peasantries. The lower class had little to no power within the government and were oppressed by the rich. The strain was too much on them that they started asking, what if we didn't have a monarchy? This marked the beginning of the revolution, where people started to raise their voices against the rulers and fight for their liberty and equality. Then, after continuous struggle and bloodshed, helped us to put an end to this absolute monarch and establish a government that worked for the welfare of the people. Finally, we were independent and became a democratic nation. And our motto, liberty, equality, and fraternity, was spread all over Europe and beyond to help other nations find their freedom. As a result, in August of 1789, the National Assembly produced La Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. This document declared that all men are equal, personal, and religion freedom belongs to everyone, and laws express the will of the people. In the end, I just want to say, freedom is not given, it is your own birthright. So take it, and thank you so much.
At this point of time, do we have any points on the floor? Any motions on the floor?
Delegate from South America, Africa, you are recognized.
The delegate of South Africa wishes to discuss the press release.
Delegates who second this motion kindly raise their placards. Delegates against this motion kindly raise their placards. This motion clearly passes. The press release is now on the floor to discuss. Here, I read out the points for the press release. We have witnessed numerous incidents over the course of history. These incidents have taught us many crucial lessons in life and changed us in a lot of ways. Today, we stand here and pray for the brave ones who lost their lives during the struggle of independence and for the innocent ones who died during catastrophes. And we pledge to avoid any wars and conflicts and settle disputes peacefully. We are now looking for a motion to adjourn this committee session. Delegate from Vietnam, you are recognized.
The delegate from Vietnam would like to adjourn this committee session.
With this, we come to the end of this session of UNGA SOCUM. I sincerely thank the members of the Executive Board for the cooperation they have provided throughout the session. I would like to thank the members of the Secretariat for their profound support. And finally, I would like to thank the delegates for stimulating and enriching discussion of this vital issue.
This session of UNGA SOCUM 2018 is now adjourned. Thank you.